I'm Amy Grisak from North 40 Outfitters, and today we're going to talk about harvesting your honey. So when you are taking the honey supers off of your beehives, this is kind of a stealth operation, because if you go in the middle of the day, there's a lot of activity, and they're not going to be so keen on you removing all their hard work that they've been working on throughout the summer. But one little trick is to go at night when they are less active, when they're typically down in the brood boxes and not worried about you coming up to the hive. A couple of tips and tricks that you can use. A lot of times during the summer we'll have that queen excluder that's between the main two brood boxes and the honey supers that helps make sure that the queen is down below. Because one thing you never want is you never want to remove a box of any sort, a honey super or any of the other chambers where the queen might be present, because then you're basically destroying your colony for the time being. So you want to make sure that queen is down below. There are a couple of products that you could use to basically vaporize that helps the bees drive them down. Many products on the market. Some people like to use smoke just to make sure the bees are more focused on staying within the hive and protecting the hive. So sometimes people will smoke the bees. So once you have your honey supers in your vehicle, in your truck, you're bringing them home. And if you have the bees at home, if they're in your backyard, you really have to cover these up, because just because you might have them in your garage and the bees are in your backyard, they're going to find them really, really fast. So you're going to want to seal these very, very tightly in a good heavy-duty trash bag. Sometimes you can fit 2 within a trash bag or more, but just make sure they're sealed very, very tightly, or the bees, we've had them some years where the bees really get all over them, and it's not irreversible, but it's definitely a hassle to try to get the bees gone so you can harvest the honey. So now the fun part though, once you have your honey supers here, a couple of ways that you can harvest honey. The easiest way that most go is with a honey extractor. Now these can be 4 frames like this one, 6, 8, there's some huge honey extractors. For most backyard beekeepers, a 4-frame extractor does just fine. Made of stainless steel, little motor on the top that makes it spin. And how it works is we'll basically take out each of the frames of honey, and as you can see on this one, they are all capped, nice and capped, which is good, which is something I should mention, is when you're harvesting honey, if you have a lot of uncapped honey, don't necessarily take that. Definitely don't mix it in with the big batch. If you want to kind of scrape and strain some of that for yourself, that's okay. But if it is not capped, it is not of the proper level of humidity. And if there's too much moisture in your honey, it can ferment. If honey is properly cured like this is with everything that's capped, it's going to stay good forever. I mean, they have found honey in Egyptian tombs that is still edible and absolutely fine. But too much moisture, you're going to end up with something like mead. You're going to end up with fermented honey. It's not necessarily going to be a good thing though. So when you have your frames of honey like this, before you put them in the extractor, what we're going to do, and I'll show you here in a second, is take a little scraper and basically just score the honeycomb, the top of it, take the layer off, and everything's going to drain in here. And this just allows the honey to spin out by centrifugal force. And I'm going to place them in, hopefully balanced well. Sometimes it can be tricky if you have different amounts of honey in each frame, and then we're going to turn it on and start spinning it. So we'll spin it one way, let a lot of that honey to come out. I'll flip the frames over and we'll really let her roll the other way and get the rest of the honey out of these combs. And once you feel that maybe it's good, just stop it, take a look. If the honey is pulled out of all that honeycomb, flip those frames around, bring her up to speed again, and once again, hold on really, really tight, spin all that honey out, and then shut her back down. So when the honey is out, of course, it flings to the walls on the inside of the extractor, and then it flows down, and then it comes out the bottom, and you just open it up and you can pour it it just comes on out. And so as the honey flows out, it flows through that, and you take out those big pieces, which is very, very handy. Might be enough for you. Other people will then strain it though through cheesecloth as well. So basically just taking a colander, putting some cheesecloth in it, and taking out all those fine particles to make it absolutely that gorgeous light color, depending on your flowers. So after you spin the honey out of the hives, it looks kind of ragged and doesn't look really pretty. But the cool thing is, so what you're gonna do is you wanna put these back in your honey super, just like the same one you took off, and then you're gonna put that back on the beehive. And the beauty is they will clean it out just perfectly. So they're gonna clean out all these little ragged bits of wax and take all the extraneous honey out of the cells, and they're gonna put it back in their cells in the hive, make things neat and tidy, and then you have these beautiful clean frames ready for next year. Now, if you don't have a honey extractor, you can still harvest honey, and actually some people prefer to use what's called the crush and strain method. The one drawback of using honeycomb year after year is the acclimation of pesticides and other chemicals in the wax. So even if you don't use any pesticides or herbicides or anything else, your neighbors often do. And it's shown that year after year, it builds up in the honeycomb. So if you're very, very sensitive to these chemicals, sometimes people choose to go this route where you're actually destroying the honeycomb, but you don't have that buildup of the chemicals. So the drawback, of course, is you're destroying the honeycomb. As I think I've mentioned before, it takes approximately 8 pounds worth of honey, of that energy, to be able to create 1 pound of honeycomb. So it will take the bees a lot more to bring it back and to build it back next season. But to do it, anybody can do it. All you need is a simple colander and a bowl and a stray yellow jacket. But take your colander and your bowl, and you're just gonna kind of scoop in there and just put it, whoopsies, put it in here. I'll do there. You know, definitely not the prettiest way to do it, but it works. So once you leave this overnight, or for however long it takes for it to drain out to your satisfaction, you're going to be left with wax. You have these little bits of wax in here, and you have the honeycomb. But the great thing is you just need to give it back to the bees, and they're going to take care of cleaning up all this leftover honey that's in between that wax. So what we often do is we'll just put it in a 9x13 or a pie plate, something like that, and set it in front of the hive. And within a day, the bees will have it cleaned up beautifully. So all you have left is wax, and then you can melt that down if you're doing beeswax candles or any lip balm or crafts or anything like that. Let the bees get all those last bits of honey out, and you're left with a beautiful, beautiful wax. Which I guess is another good note with the crush and strain method, that if you do want to harvest wax, if you do need it to make whatever craft you'd like to do, this is a good way to do it, because you get the honey, the bees do the cleanup for you, and then you have the wax as the byproduct. So if you have any bee-related questions, be sure to stop by the store and ask any of our knowledgeable staff, or visit north40.com.